I'm Shae Russell from mining.com.au, and joining me today is the Managing Director of Alma Metals, Frazer Tabeart. Frazer, it's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Shae. Thanks for hosting us.
Now, normally when I get you behind the mic, it's to talk about the Briggs copper project that you're working on up in Queensland. But I wanted to shake things up over the quiet market period and talk about some of the supply and demand fundamentals driving copper. And first things first, I want to start with supply, because everybody loves to talk about this looming shortage that we're going to experience in the second half of the decade. Tell me, have you got a view on this?
Yeah, and not only do I have a view, I think there's a lot of market commentators out there that have similar views. It's quite clear. We'll cover this when we talk about the demand side, but demand is clearly going to increase. Copper is an incredibly important mineral as part of the strive for global decarbonisation. But the supply side, is a concern. The market right now is probably roughly at equilibrium, so we're seeing reasonably stable copper prices in that sort of $4 to $4.20 a pound range. But if we look at predicted demand, then we see the market going into deficit as early as late 2026 and certainly by 2027, and that is going to drive significant price increases unless new supply comes on. And there doesn't seem to be an obvious area as to where that the required amount of new supply is going to appear in that time frame.
We're going to touch on sort of the economics of mining copper in another video, but is there sort of like a price incentive that the market needs to see to draw on more supply?
Almost certainly, yeah, and it's probably higher than where we are now. I mean, what we've seen is discovery rates have dropped across the board. The amount of money being spent on exploration for copper, whilst there's been a little bit of an increase in the last 2 years, if we look at it over a 20 or 30 year period, that certainly dropped quite significantly. And that's suggesting that that there needs to be an incentive in there for people to go and spend that money on exploration. When the reality is, permitting is taking longer. There are significant sovereign risk issues in certain parts of the world, and really all that does is that adds to the cost of discovery because it extends the time frame. So really the only sort of counter to that is incentivization through price increases, and obviously if there is a gap in supply, then that's going to have that same impact. But I think most people are predicting that within the next 2 years the copper price is going to rise from $4 a pound to maybe north of $5, and a lot of people are talking about $5.50 a pound as kind of the sort of the new incentive price to bring on new production, particularly if it's in a new area, so a greenfields discovery or development rather than brownfields. So I think that sort of speaks quite eloquently to that supply demand situation.
As you alluded to at the start of today's conversation, demand is very much predicted to explode. Where are these new sources of demand coming from?
Well, look, obviously copper, it's predominantly used because it's got a fantastic property of both a great conductor of heat and electricity. So pretty much anything to do with electricity in the modern world, and I mean we're talking computers, phones, all of our technology, AI centers, data centers, etc. Are all using copper. Everybody's electrifying everything. Electric vehicles are great example there, where each EV uses 30 to 40 kilograms of copper more than an internal combustion engine vehicle. So there's widespread sort of increase in demand. None of it in itself is huge, but when you put it all together, that leads to sort of 2 to 3% cumulative annual growth rate in copper demand, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you plot it on a graph over a number of years, then it adds up very quickly. So the net result there is we're looking at an increase in demand from currently the world's consuming about 25 million tons per year of copper. That's going to go up to 35, maybe 40 million tons a year by 2035, 2040, which is a huge amount. It's basically we've got to increase supply by nearly 50% in a 10-year time frame, and that's incredibly difficult. And put it in another context, and this is a number that a number of commentators have put out there. Over the next 30 years, we need to mine as much copper as been produced by mankind throughout its entire history if we're to meet the demand that's coming for global decarbonisation in particular. So it's a huge issue.
Listen, Frazer, this is certainly fascinating, and we're going to dig into some of the things holding copper supply back in another video. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, pleasure.